So one thing I noticed in all the interviews that are recorded online is that actually there was nothing that ever talks about how you actually initially learned to play the guitar, and who were your greatest influences in terms of your guitar style and its development over the years.
Well, my mother was musical and she got me learning the piano from the age of 4.
Right.
And then for some reason, I just got this obsession with the guitar. When I was 9, I badgered them to buy me a guitar. And the first things I was listening to were things like Lonnie Donegan and The Shadows. That was buff, as I would say, on the guitar. And Buddy Holly. It is right, this is sort of late 50s, early 60s. And potted around on the guitar. And actually, by the time I got to the age of about 12, I realised I was getting quite good. And then I met fellow musicians at my senior school. By now I was at senior school, and we formed a group. And then we just mushroomed from there. Obviously, I moved into electric guitar once I got confident that was where I wanted to go. I didn't want to be a folk guitarist.
Yeah. And then your first recorded release was, I think it's pronounced Azukel in 1969. So like, what was its theme? What does the title mean? And how was this first studio experience jamming with your former members of the period?
Well, it was basically the other guys, and this is the group we formed at school, that actually got quite good and got a bit of a reputation. And the other guys wanted to do it for real, and they actually wanted to leave the school and just do it. But for various reasons, family reasons, I was unable to do that. My parents were dead set on me going to university at that time. But so the guys left the school. They forged ahead, and they got contacted by someone who just wanted to do a music for hire album. That's what Arzakel was. So they got me in, and we just sort of threw together some songs, went in the studio for a day. I thought it was a great way of getting a bit of studio experience. And that's how it came about. It wasn't any sort of deeply thought about meaningful long-term statement. It was just 4 guys going in the studio for a day and just sort of throwing around some ideas. But it came out pretty good. I mean, I still like it.
Great. And Miquette, I believe at this time you were getting involved in film, writing and acting. So can you tell us a little bit about this part of your life before Gong?
Well, I was a movie editor, started learning editing, and then I got bored with editing, so I wanted to go on shooting, so I became a script girl, and then I became an actress. And then I edited a film on Gong. So Gong came to my editing room. And then I went and decided to live with them.
Right. Okay. So that was the first time you ever saw Steve then?
No, I met Steve...
when I went to tour with Kevin Ayers.
He was with Kevin Ayers. And he was...
I wasn't in Gong when she was already part of the Gong family when I arrived.
And I went to see them. And then at the end of the show, there were piano there. It was on the Maison de la Radio in the radio house.
Yeah, the ORTF.
ORTF, the French stuff. And I started playing keyboard with my bottom. And that's...
I thought, wow, she's got talent. She's got talent. I felt like a Hollywood producer, my big skull. Oh, she's got talent.
And that was the beginning of a relationship in a way.
Cool. So, and then Steve, you joined up officially with Gong just after that in 1973, and you were part of the sessions for the Flying Teapot. So what did you learn musically at this time, both from David Allen and from your fellow Gong members?
Well, I mean, I was in Gong for 3 years in the 70s, and it was an exhilarating roller coaster. A lot of chemical intake and psychedelic experiences and amazing music. So it was a sort of like really pivotal moment in my whole life, actually. So I learned many things.
You learned glissando guitar.
Well, I already was doing glissando, but David taught me how to do it properly.
Yeah.
But just the whole thing, David was a big influence on the whole idea of blending musical, artistic output with a philosophical, spiritual approach. And so he was very influential on me. And it was an amazing period.
What are your memories of this time in the Commune in France and then later in the UK, Miquette? And also, what was your musical input at this time? So I believe you had
too much memory.
Yes.
But for me, it was a fantastic thing because in Gong there were this guy called Tim Blake.
Yes. Yeah.
And Tim Blake was a wizard with an EMS synthesizer. And that was the first synthesizer. They were just coming up.
Right.
And I just fell in love with it. And I didn't know any musical stuff. I was with Gong. I was dancing. I was doing theater with David.
You were singing as well.
I was singing a bit. But
percussion and...
Yeah, all those kind of things. I was doing stage kind of... but not really music. And when I saw this, I started really getting in love with those EMS. And Steve Dad, really nicely, bought my first EMS.
Really? Wow.
I still have it. I still play with it.
Right.
So that was the beginning. So, and it was, at the time, it was not too many synthesizer players, isn't it?
Certainly not lady synthesizer players. Apart from Wendy Carlos, who originally was Walter, but she became Wendy.
I'm afraid to go back just to Steve, because I've asked him this question before and I found his answer very interesting. So Steve, what would you say Gong contributed musically to keeping alive the psychedelic spirit of the 60s?
Well, obviously, David was involved right from the beginning in the 60s. He was originally in the sort of beatnik movement in the early 60s when he first came over from Australia. But in a way, because...
Soft Machine as well?
Huh?
Yeah.
David is Soft Machine as well.
Yeah.
Soft Machine, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the Soft Machine, who was like the sort of the other main psychedelic band with the Pink Floyd in sort of UFO Club in 67. And he actually, he had to leave the Soft Machine because they came back from a tour of France and his visa as an Australian had a problem and they wouldn't let him back in England. So he decided to stay in France, and that's when he sort of formed Gong initially as a kind of artistic psychedelic collective, and then gradually became a band. And in a way, it was like, we saw Gong as like a second wave of psychedelia, because at sort of the end of the 60s, it all got a bit difficult with things like Altamont and Charles Manson, and everything sort of got a bit stale. And we felt we were sort of like, relighting the torch and starting a second wave of it. That's the way we saw it. Along with, felt a lot of affinity with German bands like Can and Neu, all that sort of second wave 70s psychedelia. That's the way we saw ourselves.
Yeah. And then from that, I presume you'd come to musical attention to different people around in the musical world, because I only realised recently when I looked into the background that you were chosen to play guitar on one of the few promotional performances of Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, which I think was one of the first electronic albums ever released, certainly by Virgin.
Well, it was his first.
Well, it was the first album.
Made by Virgin.
Virgin, yeah. Well, basically, we
made Virgin.
Yeah.
I had a connection with Mike anyway, because I kind of I was his virtual replacement with Kevin Ayers' band, because before that he was a guitarist in Kevin Ayers and the Whole World, and then I was a guitarist in Kevin Ayers' second band, which is when I met Miquette.
And before that,
and he'd left Kevin Ayers' band to do his solo album, which eventually became Tubular Bells. And when we all rocked up to the Manor to do the Flying Teapot album, he was there as well, and he was going in the night when we were not working. He was using the downtime to finish his record. And so, Flying Teapot and Tubular Bells were launched at the same time by Richard Branson on his new Virgin Records label. And Richard had this idea of doing this big promotional gig, and he got various people in, including me, to play guitar, also the drummer of Gong, Pierre Merlin. And we did this concert at the Queen Elizabeth Hall in June of '73. That's how it all started.
And then recorded by the BBC.
That was not the BBC recording was a later thing.
Oh, okay.
They redid it for the BBC. Some bright spark of the BBC had the idea of redoing it later in the same year.
Right. So
But the real big one was the one in June '73 at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. And incidentally,
quite a big experience, and I presume it was quite nerve-wracking. Yeah.
it was quite a laugh, actually. I mean, no one had the idea that it was going to be that big, the record. It was like Richard Branson really pushed the boat out, really believing it. But in fact, the reaction at the end of the concert was so amazing. We came away from that thinking, wow, this is going to be a phenomenon, and it was. But we had no idea how big it would be. It was just an interesting thing to do, Nice music. I enjoyed it. And as I was saying, incidentally, I've been signed up to do a rendition of orchestral Tubular Bells at the very same Queen Elizabeth Hall in June this year by the BBC. So
fantastic. Everything's become...
It's a dog that keeps biting me.
Yeah, and obviously you don't always like dogs. You quite often like fish as well. Eventually you ended up recording solo and doing your own solo albums, which I think the first was Fish Rising in 1975. So how did you decide to write each track on a solo album, even if it was with other musicians you'd worked with before? Because it must have been a big transition for you.
Well, I'd already had my own project before I joined Gong.
Okay.
And I'd actually stopped it when I was just 21 because I felt I was too young to have all this sort of pressure. And that's why I ended up playing with Kevin Ayers, and I sort of mutated into playing with Gong. But I still had the idea that at some point I was going to resume my solo career. And while I was in Gong, I put together Fish Rising, which a lot of it was material I already had before I joined Gong, but it obviously got heavily infected by being in Gong. And a lot of the musicians on the Fish Rising album were actually the other musicians from Gong. But then after we left Gong, Miquette and I left together, we decided to forge on our own and do work with different people. And it was another roller coaster ride.
Yeah, we're coming to Miquette. So Miquette, as far as I know, you did have a contribution musically to that album. And how had it changed by the time of Motivation Radio in 1977? And I believe you also wrote side A of Rainbow Dome music, released in 1979. So what were you working with technically then to produce these different types of these different albums, and what was your musical influences on those albums?
Well, I don't know. Just like same as now, we just kind of do everything kind of together, bounce from each other.
Right. But you said about getting this first EMS synthesizer.
Oh, sure. But by the time,
but I don't really play keyboard. I play noise. You see what I mean? I play a bit of keyboard, but I with the EMS we used to do sequence. Like there's a sequencer that is flat, and we used to go like this, and kind of slow it down and make sequences, and. I was like, I never kind of like, I play a little bit, but not very, I'm not a virtuoso.
Yeah, but you had quite a big rig when we were touring with the Steve Hillage band. It wasn't just the EMS.
But we had this engineer.
And I presume you're also listening to what Steve was playing as part of Fish Rising.
Engineer, which is now one of the boss of Function One. And that was our engineer originally. And I had an harp. And in the two sides of the harp there is two harp synthesizers. There is two speakers, and John, our engineer, made like jacks in all the speakers. So I would plug everything in those jacks and make like crazy sequences. And with Steve as well, we had like, it was a nightmare actually, because we had to kind of tune all the EMS. We had to tune everything, like we had like knob in a knob to be really in time with the drummer. It was like, it was madness.
Yeah, we had a lot of customized equipment.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. Actually.
It was a really like intense time actually. we couldn't handle it after 1980. Oh dear.
How's the water?
Can I have some water?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Steve, you also worked with Nick Mason from Pink Floyd on Green.
Yeah.
What did you learn from him about their sound, which you could incorporate in your
we had a connection with him already because he produced the last Gong album we were involved with, Shamal. And working with him on Green was great. I mean, I learned a lot. I couldn't really list it out, but it was, obviously we were working at the Pink Floyd studio a lot of the time, Britannia Row, and chatting about how records were made and
just a few.
It was just, it was
a few specific things you could tell.
I mean, I always said I was very lucky because I worked with three great producers in the 70s, Todd Rundgren, Malcolm Cecil, who produced Motivation Radio, and Nick Mason, and I learned really a lot. And that really helped me when I decided to stop the Steve Hillage band and work actually as a record producer.
For Simple Minds, yeah?
That was one of my early big projects, yeah. So I got a good grounding from working with these quite different, very interesting and inspiring guys.
Yeah. And you've recently issued a box set of your those early albums, posters, and a coffee table book called, I believe, Searching for the Spark, 1969 to 1991. So a retrospective of your early career going up to your first System 7 album. How did that come about? And I guess you're pretty happy with the result. Tracks like Beginning to See the Light, it must be amazing to see finally come out on a recorded CD.
Wow, it was the biggest, big project. I mean, we put it all together in this very room that you're sitting in now. And okay, the story is that for a long time, EMI, who took over Virgin, were wanting to do remastered reissues of my solo albums. But I didn't want to do that without a contract revision. Eventually, we finally got that together in 2006, and they were also talking about doing a box set. But I thought I wasn't quite ready to do a box set. We'll just do the remastered CDs for now. But the idea was sort of planted. And then quite a few years later, I was at the Prog Awards because they gave me an award for a visionary, which was very nice. And there was an award being given for box set production, and it was one with this company called Snapper Records for one they did for the family. And I thought, they're interesting guys. They look like they know what they're doing. And lo and behold, about 9 months later, they rang me up and said, we're thinking of, what do you feel about doing a big box set of Steve Hillage, And I said, okay. I suddenly thought, wow, okay, now the time's right. And so we thought about it a while. We also collaborated a lot with our dear friend Johnny Green, who runs Planet Gong, which is sort of the Gong Appreciation Society, and he's a kind of archivist of what we've all done.
Okay.
And he was a very important part of this project as well. And we decided basically that what would be interesting was to tell a story, and basically the story of how I started off, went through the whole rock music thing with Gong and Steve Hillage Band, but then did record production. Eventually found myself doing dance music.
Yeah.
And that's the theme of the whole box set.
Yeah, exactly. And then
how I ended up doing what we do now, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then jumping those years from those last albums to you first both becoming influenced by the acid house scene. What was your first experience of it, Miquette?
Oh, we got to talk about the Kraftwerk story.
Kraftwerk.
No, there was this really specific story.
I was just thinking that.
There's we both thought that.
Yeah.
Okay, it was at a Steve Hillage Band gig in Plymouth, a club called the Metro in 1978, where before we played, they had a disco and the DJ had just apparently got a copy of the Man Machine album, and he was playing it like on this disco, like really loud, like We Are the Robots and Space Lab, and all the people, including quite a lot of young people, were all dancing. And I saw it, I'd never connected. I'd always imagined like German music, German psychedelic music and electronic music, something you sat cross-legged with a big conical joint and listened to and got stoned. And seeing these people dancing to Kraftwerk and hearing the sound with the kick drums and the synth sounds coming out like well-formed eggs out of the sound system. It's in June 78 or May 78 or something. I thought, eureka. And I rushed to the dressing room and I got Miquette. And I said, Miquette, look, they're dancing to Kraftwerk. And she said, wow. And we just looked at each other. We thought, this is going to be fucking massive. For fuck's sake, we had this sort of vision of the future. And people dancing to electronic music. And so that was a big moment. Yeah. And I mean, but we didn't, this is in 1978, we didn't immediately run off and say, right, we're going to make electronic dance music. We were doing our own stuff, but eventually, we tracked the whole development. We followed it. When I was working with Simple Minds, I was quite involved with what they called futurism. At that time, in groups like Cabaret Voltaire, that was a kind of an early precursor to acid house, and things like Planet Rock, Arthur Baker. We used to go to the WAG Club. Right. I mean, we just tracked the whole thing.
Yes.
And then another big moment was. So
what was your first sort of acid house party then?
Another big moment.
Alex Patterson.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another bit before that. There was another big moment. Is that when the first big raves started, we didn't go to very much because I was in America a lot at that time. And I was producing in America a lot in '88.
Fine.
But our friend John Newsham, the very same engineer that did a lot of Miquette's synthesizer customizing, and he's now one of the main guys of Function One. He used to have a company. Before Function One, they had a company. It was called Turbo Sound, and they got him and his partner Tony Andrews, another very old friend of mine.
Function One.
Yeah. They're Tony and John. They are Function One. Before that, they were Turbo Sound, and we used to use their sound system. We were there like their prototype. We used their prototype rigs in the '70s. And there's another big connection here. And they got involved with taking their personal rig to some of the orbital, around the M25 acid house parties. And they contacted me and said, Steve, man, there's something happening here. You've just got to get involved with it. It's a bomb, man. You got to... So I was thinking, hello. Yeah. And so, and then we started going to events, and I always made a big joke about...
And that's where you met Alex? I think you heard...
That was a slightly later story, but I always made the joke that... There was a whole bunch of people who used to be in the psychedelic movement who made a transition at that time. Not a lot, but quite. We weren't alone, and I always used to joke that what interested me was the acid bit. So acid, hello, sounds good.
But most people weren't on acid. You and all your friends were like, why is everyone else there? They're all jumping around like with some big smiles on their faces. Like, no one's having an insular trip here. What's going on?
Now, we met Alex a little bit later. I was producing a band, but I was still working full time as a producer at this time. In '89, I was producing a band for EG Records, and Alex was working as an A&R man for EG Records. They were starting a fledgling dance label. And the A&R person said, oh, there's someone here you really ought to meet. And it was Alex. So we met him. I met him and had a chat with him. We developed a great affinity. And then he said he really liked Rainbow Dome music. I said, oh, yeah? You really like Rainbow Dome? That's cool. And he said, oh, we're just starting these orb nights at Land of Oz at Heaven. Why don't you come down? So we went down, and it was amazing. When we walked in the door, Alex was playing Rainbow Dome music, but mixing it with some beats. And at that point, we thought, fuck, this is what we got to do.
So I've asked you this before, Steve, but your answer was very interesting. So I can ask you again. What would you say Gong contributed musically to keeping alive the psychedelic spirit of the 60s?
I'm very happy with that song. I love that song. I like it. With Anif doing the rapping, Anif Cousins. I met him recently. He came to a gig we did in Manchester a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that first album, it's looking at the track listing and at the contributors, it's an amazing mix of producers and different contributors. The Orb's Forgotten member Thrash, and youth producing, Miquette, yourself, Anif Cousins.
Yeah, Anif, he's the guy who rapped on Freedom Fighters.
Right, okay, writing some tracks, Zoe as well, of course, beloved co-founder Steve Waddington, and even Paul Oakenfold's given a writing credit.
Well, Paul Oakenfold was quite an influence on that record, actually, because he was the guy who started Land of Oz, which took over from Spectrum at Heaven. And he was the guy who had the idea of inviting Alex to do his own room. So it was actually at Paul Oakenfold's event that we had this experience of going in and hearing Alex playing Rainbow Dome music. And basically Alex introduced us to Paul, and we told him about what we were planning to do. We thought we want to sort of do a whole new project based around dance music. And he offered advice and help, and he collaborated on one of the tracks. So he was, I'm eternally grateful for him. He kind of helped to get us fully tuned into the whole thing,
And you said Paul Oakenfold also. He's got a contribution listed. What was his? Was he also working with you musically in the studio or something? Because obviously he was a DJ, wasn't?
Paul Oakenfold, yeah, he was kind of like helping us to kind of.
Well, he was just like a kind of advisor. We were taking ideas to him and say, "What do you think of this?" And he was saying, "Oh, yeah, great! You ought to do a bit of that. You ought to do a bit of that." He was.
Where was it recorded or put together?
Some of it in our house.
Yeah.
Not here. It was before we got this place, and various studios, and mixed at Do Not Erase, which is where we met Greg Hunter.
Was it the same time we did Blue Room?
No, Blue Room was the year after.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
and we also, but basically, we did the first Orb album at the same time as the first System 7 album. They were like parallel projects.
Oh, so you were working on the Orb album as well?
Yeah, the Ultra World, the Ultra World, the first album.
Yeah. What synth do you tend to use for System 7 stuff in terms of hardware synth? Or Serum or anything like that on the software?
Serum.
Animug.
She loves the Animug and the iPad.
Animug, yeah.
I love that.
Things like Jupiters and things like that from the old days, or those are all retired.
They're all going now. The old ones are going.
We're not really like kind of.
I use Native Instruments quite a lot, but there's a company called Output, in American company. I like a lot of their stuff.
Have you seen some of these new little mini Korgs they're releasing for $250, like stripped down versions of the...
Yeah, it's kind of funny. In Ozora, they had like, I saw a few guys that have those little suitcases with all the things, little button and things, kind of quite amazing. I don't really care about how it's done. You know, a lot of people now saying, oh, you need to kind of go back to analog and the things.
And Merv's doing great things with his modular stuff.
Yeah, d'accord.
Taking a bit of time though.
There is good musician and bad musician for it. That's it. I don't care about what they use.
Yeah.
But you know, it's fun. You know, I love to have a go at touching all the knobs of Merv.
Also, one thing we do, one of our specialities, we manufacture synth type sounds out of guitar sounds. That's one of the reasons why System 7's we've got kind of a bit of a unique sound. We use the guitar in some ways that you wouldn't think it was a guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all the time, and that's one of the things we do.
Yeah, it's a good way of working. Yeah, I mean, I presume obviously that's all come into your new album because I didn't know until just earlier today, but you literally just finished the new album. It's gone off to be pressed.
Cafe 7.
Cafe 7, yeah. So what would you say is changed, or has there been any major change since Up? Because Up was sort of bringing back your more techno trance sort of influences, and then Mirror System is obviously a bit more minimal and stripped back, and then you obviously did some in between the time of Up and now you've done some very, very different albums and some ambient albums as well. So how does this new album compare?
It's got a bit of a spread.
Yeah, we decided to mix up everything.
We've done a bit of everything really, and I noticed. I look back on some of our earlier albums, like the 777 album and Fire and Water, and that was a bit of everything as well. So I think we're in that sort of mode. You know, we got some techno tracks.
And you've written a track with Marcus?
Trance tracks, light trance, not heavy trance, and we got some chill out tracks. Got a great chill out track with Adja.
Oh, it's a chill out track.
Yeah, it's not. It's a chill out track. It's based on an idea he had when he came. He was backstage when we did played Mirror System at Ozora in 2016. And he liked our set, and he said it gave him an idea. And I said, oh, well, if you do something with it, maybe we could participate. And he did something with it. He sent it, what do you think of this idea? And we thought, fantastic, man. It's going on our next album. What do you think? He said, yeah, great. So, awesome. And we obviously developed it and tweaked it and added our bits. But that's how it happened.
And the Son Comet, is that a co-written or remix or?
The Marcus track. Well, you know, sadly, Sonkai and their techno sister project, Minilog, are no more as a duo.
Oh, I didn't know.
They're working separately now. And we've developed a real communication with Marcus. Partly at Ozora, we've been hanging out with him a lot at Ozora because we've been there quite last few years. And we started doing sort of collaborative jam gigs with him. Previously we did collaborative jam gigs with Sonkai, and then we did some collaborative jam sort of short sets in between two sets with him, one in Japan, and then we did one at the Eclipse Festival in America. And then we decided we wanted to do some studio stuff, sort of based on a bit of what we were jamming on stage. That's how that. One of the reasons that psytrance became big in Japan, it's a complicated connection. Because Goa was a Portuguese colony.
Yeah.
So what was happening in Goa had a particular resonance in Portugal and also in Brazil. They were quite early adopters of sort of like psytrance because you're outside of Goa.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Brazilian people are actually of Japanese origin.
Really?
And there's a whole boat, like when we go to Universal Parallel, there's quite a lot of Brazilian Japanese there. They look great. They're quite tall, they're suntan, but Japanese looking. And they have family connections with Japan.
Yeah.
And so Brazilian Japanese people in the early 90s were going over back to Japan and saying, oh, we got this great new music scene, and it infected in Japan. That was one of the starters. I've been told that by Japanese people. It was the Brazilian Japanese and then Japanese people started going to Goa.
And you've also developed like an amazing relationship with Japan. I think you've played there 28 times or something.
30 times.
Really? So, well, yeah, exactly. Wikipedia needs to be updated by you two. It's at least 3 years out of date with regard to everything. But yeah, I think you first played there. I think was it with Orbital again?
94.
94. And then you've been back all these times since, and you've written this album, Phoenix Rising, this Japanese rock band as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how come the Japanese people, did they just love Gong? Did they?
Well, no, that's actually, it's the reverse of that. It's like Japan is a lot of people, Japan is a place where we're mostly known for System 7.
Yeah.
There's obviously sort of some old long-time fans who like Steve Hillage Band and Gong. But basically, System 7 is the thing that we're known for in Japan.
94, that 1994 experience when you first visited Japan must have made a big impression on
It was fabulous.
That gig was a really big success, and it sort of it influenced quite a lot of people.
He ended up at 9 o'clock in the morning with Alex playing DJing, and what is other guy? Jason doing Cumbria, and they were mixing his music, and everybody was dancing in the street. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was
after the club or
after the yeah, it was the closing night of that particular club. And it was a legendary event, and
a lot of people that were there at this gig, we have seen. A
lot of the people who went on to be central in the sort of trance party scene in Japan, like sort of visual guys and sort of sound system guys were at that gig. And I don't know, we just locked into something. It was like just, just fell out of the sky.
A lot of them were into rock and roll at the time, and they came to that gig, and that brings them to kind of liking techno and psychedelic music afterwards, psychedelic.
And that's when is that when this Japanese rock band heard you, or they just?
Oh, that came much later.
Rovo, is it?
Rovo, yeah, that came much later.
Right, okay. Because that's 3 years ago you did this.
Touring with Japanese will be like.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, they're fantastic. The drummer put all their wet socks in the evening around the bench. They get drunk, all right. But after in the morning, everything is super clean. It's really nice. They're like fantastic.
Well, it must have been quite a contrast to living with all these guys in the commune and with being back in the Gong days.
It's not so much back in the Gong days.
No, but it must be nice.
Yeah.
So how do you keep it fresh writing after so many decades, not just years of music, and who inspires you musically now?
I don't know. It just happens,
I mean, you mentioned Agile.
As long as it. I mean,
who inspires you musically now, like or within the last 5 years? You mentioned Agile. Obviously, he's had an influence.
Agile inspires us actually.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's a really good guitar player as well.
Yeah.
And we really enjoyed doing the novelty engine things with him at Azura.
His Agile is like such a kind of. It's fantastic because he can build equipment, you can play anything. You record when you're in his studio. We had the ball, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been to his house a few times. We got a good relationship with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Marcus is great as well because he can write about music like.
Oh yeah,
he's just like he's so intense.
He's a poet.
Yeah, so.
The man is a poet. I'll tell you what, we're bringing him over in early June for a little launch party if you're around.
I'm definitely there for that.
Yeah, in Brick Lane, this place called 91 in Brick Lane. We've got a launch party. I'm just doing the final arrangements for it now.
Like that.
And June the 8th, Saturday, June the 8th.
Okay.
I'll send you the details.
Cool.
We've got Marcus coming over for that.
So, Miquette, what would you say is probably your favourite ever memory of a System 7 gig?
One of the most beautiful one was in a little island of Hiroshima, and it was like the stage was in the temple. The people were dancing on a raft that was on a big kind of a dance floor that was on the water. And it was 150 musicians come out from everywhere. And it was like Bowls of Bengal, it was...
Yeah, with lots of different world music groups.
World music. It was for the Dalai Lama. And we were one of the only
electronic
groups. And there were a lot of... there were like... what's his name? The keyboard player.
Bernie Worrell.
Bernie Worrell. You know, people like that, Funkadelic, you know. And that is this... And they were a little bit kind of looking at us because we were playing kind of like techno music. Like, it's not proper music. And at the end, the guy who was representing the Dalai Lama and the big abbot, the very dark man, long, the abbot of the temple, they came and he said, we want to thank you, everybody that came to do that big event. It was fantastic. And we were on the dance floor with the abbot, and we want to particularly say thank you to this band System 7, because we realized when the people were dancing, they were living our mantra and dancing like if they were on mantra.
Oh, Mani Padme Hum.
And
That was the most fucking... I had tears in my eyes when he said that.
My God. And the next day everybody was saying hello to us.
It was the biggest compliment I ever had in my life,
beautiful,
that. We didn't expect that at all.
And
And we knew we got good reaction from the crowd, but we didn't expect that.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful event, the whole thing, you know.
Yeah, it was in
There were
2001.
Like
that was.
huge, big lotus flower floating on the water. The Japanese temple, you know, with a red door like that. It was just Bambis everywhere, kind of like eating roaches and papers.
Wow. Well, that's the thing. When, for me, and it's the same with youth as well. Yeah, I've got so much respect for you guys because you've had such amazing achievements. You've worked with so many legendary musicians, but you're not as well known as like Tiesto or Paul Oakenfold or etc. etc. Yeah, and you know, youth and yourselves. For me, you encapsulate the spirit of what this is all about. Yeah, and that's why you're not so well known, because you haven't got this big ego like screaming, oh, you know, I'm here. You know, you're just behind the scenes doing your thing, playing guitar, producing amazing music. And for you, do you see this like spiritual connection with regards to what you do, the way that you change the lives of people around the world? I know it's a big, it's a big statement, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. You obviously saw
well, I mean, the way
when the Dalai Lama's representative came up to you and you had tears in your eyes. Yeah.
The way people perceive when you're an artist, the way people perceive what you do, you can't really know how people, because everyone perceives it in their own way. But we've obviously, you know, goes right back to the time of Gong and the influence of David Allen. That we've obviously worked a bit at the techniques of channeling spiritual energy through music. We are a little bit good at that.
Yeah.
And so when nice things happen at gigs, maybe that's connected with what we do, you know. but we don't know. We can't tell. In the end, we just have to do what we do.
You do things, you know, you don't. If you start thinking what you're doing at the moment you're doing it, it's fucked up too much, you know.
Yeah.
But
it's no, that's what David used to say. So it's became, when you're thinking about what you're doing, particularly in a spiritual level, you sort of lose the focus. And he called it being kidnapped by the daughters of Mara. It's like you're surfing on this big wave, and rather than being totally absorbed with what you're doing and being in the moment and here and now, you go, oh wow, I'm surfing on this great wave, how fantastic. You fall off.
Yeah. Okay.
So try not to get kidnapped by the daughters of Mara.
Okay. And as well, you know, you think you have made a fantastic gig at the end, and then you have some fan coming and say, yeah, it was nice, but it wasn't
as good as 76. It wasn't as good as 92.
And you think you have done a fantastic, you think you have done crap.
Yeah, you think it's all gone wrong, and you feel like you want to kill yourself.
I have to catch this and do that, and they go, that was so fantastic. You know,
yeah, well, some of your Glade performances were incredible. The final ever Glade, that was pretty amazing, with Antonio Pagano's visuals behind you. Also, some of the.
You were there last.
You also did some of the earlier Glades as well, and you were doing some of the late night sort of soirees there. I mean, do you have a favourite memory of as well? Well, sorry, of course you have a favourite memory, but
what's your favourite gig?
Could I ask you?
I think actually Glade 2000 was a very good one.
Okay. That
was really good. That was the one with the first Glade one. It was after we played after Simon Posford.
Oh yeah.
And remember, we had an equipment problem. We all thought it was gonna. We all thought, right up until we first started playing, we thought, oh my God, I don't know if it's going to work. You know, it's going to go. What are we going to do? You know, we were like really trepidatious. And then all of it, you just did a couple of things. Suddenly a sound came back on, and it just all went ping, and it just went. And it just like, it was amazing. I really remember that gig, and there was like another massive crowd. They were right banked up right onto the railway track, and because that was when the Glade stage was the other side, where it is now.
Glade Glastonbury or Glade?
No, Glade Glastonbury.
Glade Glastonbury, yes, right, okay, I was there as well, actually.
Yeah, Glade at Glastonbury. I meant the Glade at Glastonbury in 2000.
The Glade Festival was.
Oh, we had some good times at the Glade Festival as well.
That was my favourite festival. Yeah.
It's such a family gathering of like.
Yeah, well, that grew out of the Glade stage at Glastonbury.
Yeah. Okay, well, Steve Miquette, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been amazing talking to you and finding out a little bit more. I was just saying, I wasn't sure whether to go back as far as the Gong days, but I think it's important because that's when you came together, and hopefully for a younger audience, now they have some idea of exactly where the current music has come from, because obviously there is a thread which goes through all of these different scenes, and you are a living thread, or a living tapestry, I should say. Thank you very much.
Tapestry.
The Bayer tapestry.
Tapestry.
Yeah.